It started quietly, just whispers on social media, but within days it turned into a storm that no one saw coming. Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban are over. That's what the headlines screamed, and fans around the world couldn't believe it. This was Hollywood's golden couple, the pair that seemed untouchable. So how did a marriage built on loyalty, music, and decades of love suddenly become the center of breakup rumors? At first, it seemed impossible. These were two people who'd faced everything, and fame, distance, even addiction, and somehow came out stronger every time. But this time, the tone online felt different. The words weren't coming from anonymous gossip accounts. They were coming from insiders, entertainment blogs, and even journalists who usually kept things classy. Something had shifted. The speculation really exploded after Nicole appeared at a Chanel event in Paris, alone. She looked radiant, confident, but fans instantly noticed who wasn't by her side. Keith. Within hours, photos flooded X and Instagram with captions like, "Where's Keith?" and "Trouble in Paradise?" And that's when the internet did what it always does. It turned one red carpet absence into a full-blown scandal. Some fans claimed the couple had been living separate lives for months. Others said Nicole's growing focus on her fashion and ambassador work had created distance. A few even suggested that Keith was pouring his heart out through new song lyrics that sounded painfully personal. But was any of it true, or just another wave of clickbait gossip designed to get people talking? The couple themselves stayed silent. No joint statements, no denial, not even a cryptic Instagram story. That silence became fuel. People started connecting dots that might not even exist, analyzing body language in old interviews, rewatching their red carpet clips, and debating if their smiles looked forced. Every tiny gesture was suddenly evidence in a case that no one had officially confirmed. What made the whole thing more shocking was timing. Just a year earlier, they had been one of Hollywood's rare love stories. The power couple who'd made it work when so many others had fallen apart. Their marriage had survived the chaos of celebrity life, long tours, and international schedules. And now, after nearly 2 decades together, the idea that it could all be unraveling felt unreal. But behind the glamour, people close to them hinted that the rumors might not be completely baseless. Something about long-distance living, growing commitments, and emotional strain kept surfacing in quiet conversations. Still, no one could say for sure. What's clear is this: something changed in the Kidman-Urban story. Whether it's a real fracture or just public imagination running wild, the world can't stop watching. And if the past is any sign, where there's smoke, there's usually something waiting to be uncovered. Because this story, it's far from over. Long before the breakup whispers took over headlines, Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban's story was something out of a movie. It began back in 2005. Two Australians, both at the top of their game, crossing paths at a Los Angeles event. Nicole was already an Oscar-winning actress, freshly navigating life after her high-profile divorce from Tom Cruise. Keith was a rising country star whose charm and raw honesty set him apart from the rest. When they met, something just clicked. Nicole later admitted that she felt an instant connection, but Keith didn't call her for months. She thought it was over before it even began. But when he finally reached out, his timing couldn't have been better. Their first date was electric, quiet, intimate, and deeply personal. Within a year, they were married in Sydney, surrounded by close friends and family. The world fell in love with their love. Their relationship seemed to defy the odds from the start. Hollywood is filled with short-lived romances and public meltdowns, but Nicole and Keith carried themselves differently. They weren't loud or performative. They were private, grounded, and refreshingly genuine. In interviews, they spoke about each other not as celebrities, but as human beings trying to build a real marriage in an unreal world. But even the most beautiful love stories have shadows. Just a few months after their wedding, Keith checked himself into rehab for substance struggles that had haunted him for years. It was a moment that could have shattered them. Instead, it became proof of how strong their bond truly was. Nicole stood by his side, quietly, without drama or press statements. When he got out, their connection only deepened. They called it their rebirth. Over the years, they built a family together. 2 daughters, Sunday Rose and Faith Margaret. Despite the glitz of their careers, they tried to keep life as normal as possible. No massive reality shows, no public scandals, no staged family outings. Just love, work, and faith in each other. Fans admired that. In an industry that thrives on chaos, they represented something rare: stability. Every time they appeared on a red carpet, they looked in sync. The subtle hand on the back, the shared smiles, the quiet whispers when cameras weren't looking. Their chemistry wasn't forced. It was the kind that made people believe that real love could exist even under blinding Hollywood lights. That's why the recent rumors hit harder than most. This wasn't just another celebrity couple making headlines. This was them, the ones who seemed to have it all figured out. If even they were struggling, what hope was there for anyone else in that world? But as fans have learned, the deeper you go into a Hollywood love story, the more complicated it often becomes, and soon the cracks behind the perfect facade would start to show. For years, Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban seemed untouchable, the golden pair of Hollywood and Nashville, walking red carpets with grace and gratitude. But beneath the glow of flash bulbs and award show applause, something quieter had started to change. It wasn't one moment, one fight, or one headline. It was a slow drift, the kind that sneaks up on even the strongest couples. Their careers, once complementary, began to pull them in opposite directions. Nicole was often away on film sets that stretched across continents, while Keith toured endlessly, performing to sold-out arenas. The miles between them grew longer, the phone calls shorter. At first it was manageable, part of the life they'd both signed up for. But over time, the distance started to feel less like space and more like separation. Insiders described them as two people living in parallel worlds. When Nicole wrapped a shoot in Europe, Keith would already be in the middle of a North American tour. Family time became something that had to be scheduled, penciled into calendars between commitments. And while both had promised to prioritize each other, the spotlight doesn't wait for anyone. Fame demands attention, and it rarely shares it evenly. In interviews, subtle hints began to emerge. Nicole would talk about missing her family during long shoots. Keith would mention the challenges of being apart. To most people, they still looked perfect, polished and poised, but those who paid attention could sense a growing tension behind the smiles. Then came whispers from the entertainment world. A few tabloids speculated about disagreements over career choices, parenting styles, and time spent apart. Some claimed Keith wanted to slow down and focus on family, while Nicole was entering a new creative renaissance, saying yes to daring roles and global projects. Whether the rumors were true or not, one thing was clear: their rhythm was changing. Friends close to the couple said Nicole had always been the anchor. Calm, steady, quietly strong, while Keith was more emotional and open-hearted. But lately, even she seemed tired. The long years of trying to balance fame, family, and love were starting to weigh heavy. The smiles and photos were still there, but the spark that once lit up the room seemed dimmer. And yet they tried, they really did. They showed up for each other's premieres, hugged on camera, and spoke kindly in interviews. They didn't air their issues, didn't seek sympathy. For a while, that silence worked. It protected them, but it also trapped them inside a pattern of pretending everything was okay when it wasn't. Behind closed doors, the arguments became more frequent, the misunderstandings sharper. What once felt like partnership began to feel like endurance. Two people still deeply connected, but moving at different speeds, chasing different dreams. And so, as 2025 began, the cracks were no longer invisible. They were there, quiet but undeniable, waiting for the moment everything would finally break. For years, Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban were the Hollywood couple that made people believe love could survive fame. But behind the smiles, red carpets, and award night glances, things had started to shift. Slowly at first, then all at once. By early summer 2025, insiders whispered that the couple had quietly separated. To the public, everything still looked intact: family dinners, public support, and loving comments online. But according to people close to them, the distance had been growing long before the world ever noticed. Keith's music career had him on the road for months at a time, while Nicole's projects, from expats to her new film collaborations, kept her in different corners of the world. The two had built an empire together, but their schedules, ambitions, and lifestyles were moving in opposite directions. Sources close to the couple claim Nicole was fighting to save the marriage. She'd been there through Keith's early struggles and had always spoken of him as her soulmate. But love, even deep love, can't always bridge silence. The warmth they once shared was slowly replaced with politeness, a quiet understanding that something precious was fading. On September 29, 2025, the first reports broke. Nicole and Keith had separated earlier that summer. Fans were stunned. It didn't seem real. These two had weathered more than most, from addiction battles to relentless tabloid scrutiny, and had always come out stronger. But this time, the story didn't end with reconciliation. The very next day, September 30th, Nicole Kidman officially filed for divorce in Los Angeles, citing irreconcilable differences. She listed their date of separation as the same day she filed. It was clean, legal, and heartbreakingly final. Even more telling was the custody detail buried in the documents. Nicole requested to be the primary residential parent of their daughters, Sunday Rose and Faith Margaret. It wasn't a dramatic move, just a maternal one. The quiet instinct of a mother determined to create stability when everything else felt uncertain. Insiders described Keith as devastated but respectful. There were no public accusations, no interviews, no blame. Just silence, the kind that only follows when love turns into memory. In private, Nicole leaned on her close circle of friends, including longtime collaborators from her film and fashion worlds. Yet, as painful as the process was, those who knew her best said she carried herself with grace. Not bitterness, not anger, just quiet resolve. Hollywood has seen countless high-profile splits, but this one struck differently. Maybe because for nearly 2 decades, Nicole and Keith had defied the odds. They had built a family, a life, and a rare kind of balance. But even the strongest bonds can stretch too far before they break, and when they finally did, Nicole didn't crumble. She stepped forward, calm, composed, and ready for whatever came next. She didn't say a word publicly about the divorce. Instead, she spoke through her silence and through her next move, one that would make the world stop and look. When Nicole Kidman stepped out in Paris on October 6, 2025, the world took notice. It wasn't just another celebrity appearance, it was a statement. 1 week after officially filing for divorce from Keith Urban, Nicole re-entered the spotlight with a kind of calm confidence only she could carry. Dressed in Chanel from head to toe, the Oscar winner arrived at the brand's Spring-Summer 2026 show, and for a brief moment, every camera lens turned her way. Her outfit was understated, yet undeniably powerful. A crisp white button-down tucked into classic blue jeans, a burgundy Chanel clutch in hand, and black heels that spoke of effortless sophistication. But what really caught everyone's attention wasn't the clothes. It was her face, the look, the energy, that quiet, knowing smile that said, "I'm still here, and I'm not broken." As she walked into the venue, surrounded by a sea of paparazzi and flashbulbs, Nicole wasn't just attending a show, she was reclaiming her narrative. The headlines that had once read, "Nicole Kidman files for divorce," suddenly transformed into "Nicole Kidman serves face." It was a pivot that few could pull off with such grace. That same day, Chanel announced her as the newest ambassador for the luxury French fashion house, a role perfectly aligned with her timeless poise. Her partnership with Chanel wasn't new. Their relationship stretched back decades, from her iconic 2003 Chanel No. 5 campaign to her unforgettable Met Gala appearance in 2023, where she recreated that very look. But this time, it felt different. It wasn't nostalgia, it was rebirth. Nicole's Instagram post from the event hit millions of timelines. A simple caption: "Thank you, a Chanel official, for having me and my girls so excited to be a part of it with you, Mathieu Blazy." Just 4 photos, a carousel of calm, confidence, and couture, but within hours her comment section exploded. First she served the divorce papers, now she's serving face. One fan wrote, a comment that went viral across X, formerly Twitter, and TikTok. Others flooded her feed with praise. "Effortless beauty. Keep shining, queen." Even Lindsay Lohan and Debbie Gibson dropped hearts and words of support. It wasn't just celebrity solidarity. It was a collective moment of admiration for a woman who had weathered the storm and emerged stronger. At her side were her 2 daughters, Sunday Rose and Faith Margaret, both dressed elegantly for the Chanel show. It was a rare public appearance for the trio, a quiet show of unity, of motherly grace amid emotional upheaval. Nicole smiled, posed with Baz Luhrmann and Vanessa Paradis, and let the cameras do the rest. No statements, no explanations, just presence. In a world obsessed with scandal and sorrow, Nicole Kidman had done something radical. She turned heartbreak into high fashion. And as the flashes faded that evening in Paris, it became clear this wasn't a comeback. This was a coronation. Just 1 week after filing for divorce, Nicole Kidman reemerged, and she did it the way only she could, with silence, style, and power. On October 6, 2025, Paris Fashion Week was already buzzing. The Chanel Spring-Summer 2026 show was filled with stars, cameras flashing, and couture dreams. But when Nicole Kidman arrived, the entire mood shifted. The crowd went quiet, just for a moment, as she stepped out of a sleek black car in jeans, a crisp white button-down, and that unmistakable calm confidence she's known for. It wasn't just an outfit, it was a statement, because this was Nicole's first public appearance since the world learned she had filed for divorce from Keith Urban. And instead of retreating or hiding from headlines, she walked right into the spotlight, not as someone broken, but as someone reborn. That same day, Chanel announced Nicole as its newest global ambassador. The news spread like wildfire. Fashion insiders called it a masterclass in reinvention. It was a reminder that Nicole has always known how to turn life's hardest chapters into timeless moments. In her Instagram post from the event, her first since the split, Nicole thanked Chanel for having me and my girls, referring to her daughters Sunday Rose and Faith Margaret, who attended the show beside her. It was subtle, graceful, and deeply symbolic. A mother moving forward, hand in hand with her daughters, building something new out of everything that had just fallen apart. Fans flooded her comments with love and admiration. First, she served the divorce papers, then she served face, one user wrote. A playful but honest reflection of how Nicole had reclaimed her narrative. Others simply said what everyone was thinking. She looked free. And maybe she was. In the photos, Nicole's new bangs framed her face as she sat front row beside French icon Vanessa Paradis. The actress who once embodied heartbreak in Moulin Rouge was now embodying resilience in real life. The color palette of her outfit, white, burgundy, black, seemed almost poetic. Purity, strength, and mystery intertwined. Her appearance with Australian director Baz Luhrmann, who had directed her in Moulin Rouge, and Australia, only added more fuel to the story. Was this a full-circle moment? A creative rebirth? Fans and tabloids alike couldn't stop speculating, but Nicole didn't explain a thing. She didn't need to. Her message was written across every camera flash and every click of that Chanel clutch. I'm still here, and I'm just getting started. After 19 years of marriage, her world had shifted, but her identity hadn't. Nicole wasn't defined by loss. She was defined by reinvention. And as she stepped into her role as Chanel's newest face, she wasn't just representing fashion. She was representing survival, elegance, and control. Because when one chapter closes, some people break. But Nicole Kidman, she turns the page and owns the story. While Nicole Kidman stepped back into the spotlight with poise and quiet strength, Keith Urban chose a different path. One lined with silence, guitars, and unspoken emotion. Since news of their separation broke, Keith has avoided interviews and stayed off social media, leaving fans to wonder what was really going on behind the scenes. For a man known for wearing his heart on his sleeve through his music, the silence felt almost louder than words. But music has always been Keith's language, and lately it's been speaking volumes. During a small Nashville performance in late September, just days before the divorce filing became public, Keith previewed a new song. Fans described it as haunting. A slow ballad about distance, love slipping through fingertips and trying to hold on when someone's already gone. He never mentioned names, never gave context, but the emotion was raw enough to make people cry in the audience. One lyric in particular stood out: "I watched the sunlight fade in your eyes, and I kept pretending it was still shining." To anyone else, it was just poetry. But to longtime fans who had followed his love story with Nicole, it sounded like heartbreak put to melody. Sources close to Keith told people that he was devastated by the split, but determined to keep things respectful for the sake of their daughters. "He's hurting, no question," one insider said, "but he still loves her deeply. He always will." Keith's approach contrasted sharply with the usual Hollywood pattern. No tell-all interviews, no cryptic posts, no PR battles, just quiet dignity. And that silence made people feel for him even more, because everyone knew the backstory, how Nicole had stood by him during his toughest battles, how they'd built a love that looked unbreakable. And now, watching him walk through this chapter without bitterness was both heartbreaking and admirable. In early October, fans noticed something else. Keith quietly updated his tour set list. He began opening shows with The Fighter, the 2017 song he'd written about his love for Nicole. Except this time, he performed it slower, softer, with a tone that sounded more like goodbye than devotion. Clips of the performance spread across TikTok, amassing millions of views. Comments poured in from fans who said they could feel the pain behind every note. It wasn't confirmation of anything, but it didn't need to be, because music doesn't lie. Keith may not be talking, but his songs are telling the story for him. A story of loss, love, and letting go with grace. And while Nicole was stepping into her Chanel era, Keith was finding his footing through melody, processing the heartbreak in the only way he knew how. Sometimes silence speaks louder than interviews, and sometimes a broken heart sings louder than words ever could. For years, Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban were the definition of Hollywood grace, hand in hand on red carpets, whispering inside jokes at award shows, and stealing quiet smiles when the cameras weren't looking. But sometime in early 2024, something changed. It wasn't loud, dramatic, or public. It was subtle. The kind of change you only notice when you've followed a couple for a long time. At the Academy Awards, fans pointed out that Keith, once Nicole's constant red carpet anchor, walked slightly apart from her. They posed for photos, smiled for the cameras, but the warmth, that spark they were known for, seemed missing. Nicole's smile looked polished but not entirely present. Keith's eyes, usually soft when he looked at her, seemed distant. Body language experts weighed in almost immediately. One viral TikTok analysis compared their 2018 Oscars appearance, where they couldn't stop touching each other, to 2024's. The verdict? They look like two professionals doing their job, one expert said, not a couple in sync. The next red carpet only deepened the speculation. At the Met Gala, Nicole arrived in a custom Chanel gown that took everyone's breath away. But Keith wasn't there. She attended solo, posing gracefully but avoiding interview questions about her husband. When a reporter asked if Keith would join her later, she smiled faintly and said, "He's supporting me from afar." That line became tabloid gold. Soon, entertainment outlets began piecing the puzzle together. Headlines like, "Where's Keith?" and "The urban silence grows louder" flooded social media. Fans noticed he'd stopped commenting on her posts, something he'd always done lovingly and publicly. Behind the scenes, people close to them reportedly knew what was happening. One anonymous source told the Daily Mail they'd already been living mostly separate lives, different countries, different schedules, but they didn't want to make anything official until they were sure it was really over. Their final public appearance together came in late summer at a charity gala in Sydney. The photos were beautiful, Nicole in a shimmering silver gown, Keith in a classic tux. But when you looked closely, you could see the truth. The hands that used to find each other instinctively never touched once. After the event, Nicole flew back to New York, Keith to Nashville. They never appeared together again. Looking back now, those final months feel like a quiet farewell playing out in real time. Graceful, restrained, but undeniably sad. Fans still revisit those red carpet videos trying to pinpoint the exact moment the love started fading. But maybe that's the thing about endings. They rarely happen all at once. Sometimes they begin with a few inches of distance between two people who once stood shoulder to shoulder under the flash of 1,000 lights. When the official statement finally dropped, it was everything fans expected, and nothing they were ready for. A joint message shared to both of their Instagram accounts read simply, "After much thought and care, we've decided to separate. Our love and respect for each other remain, as do our shared commitments to our children. We ask for privacy as we move forward separately, with gratitude for the years we shared. No drama, no accusations, no details. Just a quiet ending to one of Hollywood's most admired love stories." The world, however, filled in the blanks. Social media erupted with heartbreak and theories. Some blamed distance, others whispered about emotional drift, while a few wondered if their careers and the demands that came with them had simply taken too much. Nicole, as always, handled it with quiet dignity. She returned to work almost immediately, resuming filming for her new HBO project, The Perfect Couple. Insiders told Variety that she kept her emotions strictly professional on set, even as co-stars noticed her moments of deep reflection between takes. Keith, on the other hand, poured his heart into music. He reportedly began recording a new album in Nashville just weeks after the news broke, one that, according to Rolling Stone, has a rawness and vulnerability not heard in his sound for years. One track title leaked online, "Back to Quiet Roads," sending fans into emotional overdrive. In the months since, both have kept a respectful silence about each other. No public shade, no interviews about the split, just distance, mature, deliberate, and final. Friends say they've remained in contact for the sake of their two daughters, Sunday and Faith. Nicole spends much of her time in New York and Paris for fashion and film work, while Keith continues touring in the U.S. The girls reportedly split time between both parents. Still, fans can't help but wonder, will they ever cross paths again? Hollywood history is filled with on-again, off-again love stories, but those close to the couple insist this one is different. They both know this is the right thing, one source told People. There's sadness, but also peace. In many ways, their story has come full circle. Two people who found each other at their most vulnerable. She, recovering from heartbreak, he, battling addiction, built something beautiful and lasting for nearly 2 decades. And though it ended, it never felt scandalous. Instead, it feels like the final act of a love story that matured, softened, and eventually outgrew itself. Now Nicole walks red carpets alone with the same poise that made her a legend. Keith sings to sold-out crowds, smiling through lyrics that seem to ache a little deeper. Two stars still shining, just no longer side by side, because sometimes love doesn't need to last forever to be real.